Welcome to Effective Teaching and Learning for Secondary Science. This is Module 5.4. In this module, we will focus on diverse adolescent learners. As you most likely are aware, there exists an overarching idea of equity in education today. Equity in education is seen as an essential component to providing students with the opportunities and skills that will ensure their future success, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, ability, or disability. As you are also most likely aware, the diversity of today's learners is ever increasing. However, the diversity among teachers in the United States is relatively stagnant, with most teachers being white or Caucasian females. Thus, a disparity in diversity among teachers exists in relation to student diversity, thus warranting a close examination of how to best ensure an equitable education in the science classroom. Considering diversity in the science classroom is also important as, by itself, it does not affect student success in science. However, factors related to diversity do affect student success. It is these factors that we'll examine more closely in this module. The major diversity factors that influence student science achievement include socioeconomic status, immigration status, English proficiency, and geographic location. Socioeconomic status is considered the single most powerful factor in determining students' level of achievement. This is often due to a lack of resources outside of school, such as resources within the home that facilitate learning and growth. Likewise, students who experience low socioeconomic status typically come from broken or fragile homes, have parents with low education levels, or lack resources to meet basic needs. Immigration status also can influence students' levels of achievement, as oftentimes immigrant families experience poor economic conditions, a lack of understanding of cultural and social norms, or may lack sufficient skills for communication. Likewise, English language proficiency may influence students' achievement, as students are required to learn complex academic and scientific language while simultaneously learning the English language. And finally, geographic location may influence students' achievement, as those within rural areas often experience less exposure to high-quality educational opportunities. Thus, it is inherently important that science teachers, as well as all teachers, be highly qualified, as studies support that a positive correlation exists between students' achievement and teacher quality. In response to these factors, many educators have adopted the deficit model, which involves the idea that lack of success among students is assumed to be because their home life or cultural background is less advanced than that of students from the cultural mainstream. As a response to this, many teachers provide remediation opportunities to students in order to mitigate the deficit between home and culture and school. However, this viewpoint is becoming less desirable as the focus has shifted to the incompatibilities between the students' backgrounds and special needs and the expectations of the science classroom. Thus, the more desirable approach is to provide differentiation within the classroom. The overarching idea, however, is that equity in the science classroom means that all students, regardless of cultural background, ethnicity, gender, or special needs, have the same opportunity to learn quality science. With these things in mind, there are two main reasons for equity in science: economic and social justice. Economic reasons involves providing equal opportunities for students to prepare for the workforce and competition on a global scale, whereas social justice involves providing equal opportunities for students to gain valuable 21st century skills that will enable productivity in the societal context. Thus, it is important for teachers to have a balance of multicultural perspectives and universalist perspectives. Universalist perspectives mean that science, as a human construction, is a universal form of knowledge that transcends cultural interpretations, with the overall tenet being that the efficacy of humans' explanations of the natural world are grounded in reality. The universalist perspective has been criticized by many who are advocates for multicultural teaching, as it does not recognize the unique viewpoints that culture brings to science. For instance, consider Native Americans' perspectives on science, that is, truth and reality in relation to natural phenomenon compared to Western science. Yet, at the same time, the universalist approach cannot be completely ignored due to the heavy focus on evidence and universal scientific truth prevalent today. Thus, a balanced approach is important in providing students with a quality science education while also being culturally responsive. Experts suggest that science teachers consider culturally harmonious variables, which are those variables that influence the teaching and learning process. 6 culturally harmonious variables have been identified by Barba 1998. They include the format of print materials, instructional language, the level of peer interactivity, the use of role models, elaboration of content, and interactivity with manipulative materials. But how might a teacher address these variables in the classroom? Well, Chapata and Kabbalah 2010 suggest the following. Use printed materials that are highly visual, such as comic books. Reduce cognitive demand associated with science vocabulary, often through the use of pictures. Have students draw and label equipment using both the native language and the English language. Introduce concepts through labs or demos, and then follow this up with experiences, discourse, and reading. Demonstrate procedures multiple times and utilize student role play. Engage students in collaborative work and encourage discussion and sharing of ideas. Organize learning groups and pair English and bilingual students together. Select instructional materials that utilize cultural role models. Use culturally familiar objects, examples, and analogies. And talk to parents using a translator if needed to gather critical background information. So, now that you have some ideas of how to incorporate multicultural perspectives and culturally harmonious variables in the classroom, let's now consider the types of students that might require differentiation based on ability and/or disability. These students are considered students with exceptionalities and might include students with academic disabilities, students with physical disabilities, and students who are gifted and talented. Each type of student requires teachers to differentiate instruction, that is, to modify regular lessons to meet students' unique needs. Students with academic disabilities typically endure academic disabilities due to learning disabilities or behavioral disorders. It is becoming more and more common for students today to be diagnosed with a learning disability and, especially, a behavioral disorder. Take, for instance, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, that seems to pervade classrooms today. How might a teacher appropriately differentiate for academic disabilities? Chapata and Kabbalah 2010 suggests the following. Use activity-oriented approaches. Emphasize structure, clarity, redundancy, and engagement. Utilize an appropriate pace. Use peer pairing. Help students to self-monitor their behavior. Break more complex tasks into smaller parts. Use a combination of written, pictorial, and spoken instructions. Teach test-taking strategies. And above all, be flexible. Students with physical disabilities are unique in the sense that physical limitations might preclude their full participation in normal classroom activities and might have even limited their prior experience in science. With this in mind, teachers are encouraged to become fully acquainted with the student's disabilities, as well as the implications such disabilities will have on the student's instructional experience. Likewise, it is also important for teachers to consistently solicit input from the student, as they are your most valuable resource on how to accommodate their disabilities. Finally, students that are gifted and talented often are overlooked. Studies suggest that few resources exist that focus on the needs of gifted and talented learners. Thus, it is important for teachers to consider the needs of students that fall within this group of exceptionalities. Students who are gifted and talented typically experience high levels of academic achievement, motivation, creativity, and task commitment, thus warranting differentiation to the normal curriculum. Two types of curriculum are suggested for students that are gifted and talented: accelerated curriculum and enriched curriculum. Accelerated curriculum allows students to move through the same subject matter as their peers, but at a faster rate, whereas enriched curriculum permits gifted and talented students to have new experiences in addition to what is made available to other students. In considering all students with exceptionalities, there are 7 elements that are recognized as controllable to the teacher and having the benefit of addressing learner needs. These 7 elements are time. You may increase the time that students are given on specific tasks or accelerate their movement through the tasks. Space, by utilizing learning style and using teacher proximity. Resources, by providing differentiation through the use of multiple languages, multiple cultures, and a combination of verbal, written, and visual instructions. Student grouping, by levels, similarities, or even differences. Instructional strategies, such as hands-on strategies, multicultural strategies, and gender-sensitive strategies. Learning strategies, such as the use of discourse and discussion and other learning aids. And importantly, teacher partnerships, by using peer coaching and by involving the parents and communities.